Hello everyone, welcome back to new session, Computer Science 2 for Summer LTU 2022. Today we are doing the final exam review session. Basically, I will go over the topics and the book and point out for you what is important, what's lesser important. Quick reminder that the final exam is out of 30 points. So if you think you're struggling, the final exam has a big weight over the grade. Basically, you can go from D to B or from C to A. So 30 points is a lot. I would like to point out that this class, labs, and participation, this is for on-campus classes, not for online, because basically I can't walk around you while doing the lab. So everybody is going to get full grade for the labs. So yeah, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and open the book and go chapter by chapter, point out for you what you should focus on more important than others. So from chapter 1, there are basic knowledge. You don't have to memorize every topic from chapter 1, but you need to know in general what is a program and what is hardware, what is software, what are programming languages, like the most popular, maybe top 3 most popular programming languages, and what are the tasks of each program. Basically input, processing, output. Any program has receives data, does a task or a processing, and then produces a result or an output. And in general, the idea of object-oriented programming. This is from chapter 1. Then from chapter 2, so this is from chapter 1. Then from chapter 2, which is Intro to C++, you need to know what are the parts of C++ program in general. You need to know the cout object. You need to know what is include directive, what are basically those include statements. You need to know what are variables, what are literals, and how to assign values to variables. You need to know the data types. You have integer, char, double, float, the size in bytes for each. You don't have to know every data type, but at least 5 different data types with their sizes in bytes. You need to know the string class. You need to know, of course, Boolean data type, how to determine the size of a data type, basically the size of method, scoping rules. So basically you have local variables, and anything outside that scope of the variable cannot use that variable. You need to know arithmetics, of course, multiplication, subtraction, etc. And this is it for chapter 2. In chapter 3, of course, you need to know the CN project. You need to know, let's see, what's lesser or more important. How to debug. Of course, you need to know how to debug and step in your program. Yeah, this is it in chapter 3. The rest of those are repetitive. In chapter 4, which is making decisions, of course, you need to know first relational operators. Greater than, less than, are they equal, are they not equal, greater than or equal, less than or equal. You need to know the if statement. Then you need to know the else statement. You need to know that you have nested, you can have nested ifs, you can have chained ifs. So nested ifs means if condition, open scope, inside the scope you have another if. Then inside that if you have another if. So those are nested ifs. Or you can have a chained if, which is if condition scope, then else if, else if, else if. It's like chain. You need to know logical operators, or and, the and operator and the or operator. You need to know how to check range of numbers if my number is within 20 and 100, for example. You need to know that switch statement. This is it for chapter 4. Then in chapter 5, which is loops and files, you need to know, you start by knowing the increment operator and decrement operator, postfix increment, prefix increment, postfix decrement, and the prefix decrement. Then you need to start with the loops. You need to know the while loop and how to control your while loop, which is basically a Boolean value that goes in the condition while some condition execute. Then you need to know about counters, how to count iteration or how to iterate based on a specific count. I want to iterate 10 times. Once you learn about counters, then it's easy for you to understand the for loop. Then after for loop, it's easy to understand the do while loop. So now you have while loop, for loop, and do while loop. You need to know that one of them is pre-test and the rest are post-test. You need to know how to keep a running total of the number of execution. You need to know how to with files. So you need to know how to open a file, how to check if a file was opened successfully, how to access that file, whether to read or to write, and then how to close the file. The 4 main tasks of a file, you need to understand them fully. Open a file, check if the file was opened successfully, process the file, and close the file. Then in chapter 6, which is functions, of course, you need to know how to define and build a function. There is a function header, which is basically header plus semicolon is the prototype. There are function prototypes, and then there are their definitions or their bodies. You need to know how to call your functions. You need to know how to pass data to your functions. You need to know how to return data from your functions. You also need to know when it comes to function, you need to know the difference between local variables and global variables. You need to know static local variables, basically variable that doesn't die once the function finishes executing. You also need to know default arguments, how to default a value to an argument, and you need to know passing by reference versus passing by value. Very important. Then in chapter 7, which is arrays and vectors, you need to know about arrays, how to declare an array, how to assign it value, how to initialize it with values, how to access the items in the array. You need to know processing array contents, basically. You need to know how to send an array to a function. You need to know about two-dimensional arrays and how to send them to a function. You need to know vector. What is a vector? Where do we get vector? Basically, we include it. It's provided by the language. And you need to know that it is different from array by having flexible size. So in this chapter, you need to know about arrays, you need to know about vectors and the difference between them. Then we go to chapter 8, which is searching and sorting arrays. So you need to know two algorithms. You need to know the selection sort and the bubble sort. And this is basically for this chapter. You don't need to know more in this chapter. Excuse me. Then we go to chapter 9, pointers. So you need to know how to declare a pointer. You need to know how to get an address of a variable and then assign it to the pointer. You need to know the relation between arrays and pointers. So, you know, you have the pointer notation, and then you have the square bracket notation. You can access elements in the array using the square operator or using the pointer notation, which is pointer plus I dereferenced. Then you need to know how to initialize a pointer, how to assign it a value, how to compare two pointers, how to send pointers to functions. You need to know that you have constant to constant, constant to variable. You have variable to constant, variable to variable. You also need dynamic, you also need to know dynamic memory allocation. And this is it for chapter 9. Then in chapter 10, you need to know how to do character testing, how to do character case conversion, how to like convert from capital letter to small letter or the opposite. You need to know about the C strings. So remember, C string is different than a string. What is a C string and what is special about C string? You need to know the library functions that help you with the C strings. You need to know how to convert string to a numeric conversion. So if I have the string 1, 2, 3, for example, I need to convert it to a numeric value, which is 123. Then, yeah, this is it for this chapter. We go to chapter 13, which is intro to class. Of course, you need to know how to create your class. You need to know how to declare an instance of that class. You need to know private members, public members. You need to know what's inline member functions and how they differ from creating or defining the member functions outside the class. Of course, you need to know about constructors. You need to know how to pass arguments to the constructors. You need to know about destructors. You need to know about overloading the constructor. So you have a default constructor, you have a constructor that takes 3 values, you have a constructor that takes 2 values, etc. You also need to know about having a vector of classes, of instances, basically, or an array of your instances. And this is for the intro to classes. Here we covered memory allocation. Then in chapter 11, structured data, you need to know what is, in general, the knowledge, the information, basically what is an abstract data type, what are structs. Then you need to know how to create your own struct, how to declare an instance of the struct, how to access members from the struct, how to initialize a struct, very important. So I create an instance of the struct and then I give it values right away. Open curly braces, give it the values, close curly braces. And finally, you need to know how to use structs in a vector or an array of structs or vector of structs, just like the homework that we did. Then we go to chapter 14, which is more about, excuse me, more about classes. You need to know about static members. You need to know about friends of classes. You need you need to know about operator overloading, very important. All the operator overloading that we covered in class. We covered maybe 6 or 7. You need to know those. Then we go to chapter 15, which is inheritance, polymorphism, and virtual functions. So you need to know what is inheritance. You need to know what is private, protected, public inheritance. And then you need to know private, protected, public access modifiers inside the class. So remember, inside the class, you have a private section, protected section, public section. And then in inheritance, you have 3 types of inheritance. You have a private inheritance, protected inheritance, and public inheritance. Then you need to know the relation between the base and the derived class and their constructors and destructors. Which constructor gets executed first, which destructor gets executed first, etc. Then you need to know about polymorphism. What is polymorphism? It works with only with pointers, remember, so review that topic and have a solid understanding of it. Then we go to chapter 12, which is advanced file operations. So in chapter 12, you need to know what are the file operations that we covered and the different modes. Remember, you create an F-stream instance and then you open it with a mode, whether it's in mode or out mode or binary mode. Then you need to know how file output formatting works. just like it works with the display, it works with a file, set width, set precision, fixed, left, right, etc. Then you need to know how to pass your fstream object to a function. And you need to know how to have functions to read and write from a file. You need to know about binary files. And finally, you need to know about uh, random access files. So remember, we covered seek put, seek get, and tell put, tell get. And you have three references. You have beginning of the file, you have current, you have end. So review that topic. Then we go to chapter 16, which is exceptions and templates. So exception and template were very easy. You need to know what's an exception and how to handle that exception, how to catch it. So you have a try and catch a block, and you have a throw, and you need to know how to rethrow. Then you need to know about templates, what is a function template, and how to write your own function template. Very simple. Then we go to chapter 17, which is the standard template library. So you need to know the important containers. What is a container first, defining a container, what is an iterator, and then you need to know the associative containers and the sequential containers. And some of the most important functions. So you know that you have pushback for vector and some methods that are specific to other containers. So just go over like map, vector, and understand their functions and what's common between map, set, multi-map, multi-set, unordered map, unordered set, and the differences between them. Then we go to chapter 18, which is linked lists. So what is a linked list? You need to know. And then you need to know linked list operations that we covered. So append node, insert node, delete node, and then destroy the list. Then we go to chapter 19, which is stacks and queues. So you need to know what is a stack and what is a queue, the difference between them. And then you need to know the most important, the important methods for each. You have push, pop, top, and empty for stacks. You have push, pop, front, empty for queues, and how to use them. Very simple. And finally, we need to cover recursion. So what is a recursion and how to solve whatever we covered. So how to do factorial recursively and how to do Fibonacci recursively. And that should be it. So if you have any questions, send me an email or send me on Canvas and let me know. I'll be more than happy to help you. Other than that, good luck everyone, and I will grade your tests as soon as possible.